All right, let's jump right in. What we're doing today is a little different. We're not just looking at a timeline of historical events. Nope, we're actually stepping inside the personal account of a man who was right at the heart of a nation's fight for freedom. This is his story, in his own words, about a soldier's journey when his duty to his country collided head-on with his loyalty to his own people.
Wow. Just think about those words for a second. Broadcast over a captured radio station, they were like a lightning strike in the dark. It was this single moment of pure defiance that just electrified an entire people and drew a line in the sand. So you have to ask yourself, right? What leads a professional soldier to make such a huge, world-changing declaration? To really get that, we gotta go back to the beginning.
You see, before he was the voice of a revolution, Ziaur Rahman was a totally dedicated officer in the Pakistan army. His story doesn't start with him as a rebel, not at all. It begins with him as a model soldier, deeply committed to his profession and to the country he served. And what's so incredible, the reason we can tell this story this way is because this entire account comes directly from his own personal writings. We get to see it all unfold through his eyes to understand what was driving him from his own perspective. I mean, it's such a rare first-person look into a pivotal moment in history. And his early career was, by all measures, picture perfect. He gets into the prestigious Kakul Military Academy, earns his commission as an officer, and even rises to become an instructor there, literally shaping the next generation of soldiers. He was a man who was deeply invested in the army he was part of. But underneath that uniform, something else was stirring.
And that's something else? Well, that's where this story gets really, really interesting. It's all about this growing tension between his life as a Pakistani officer and his deep, undeniable identity as a Bengali.
So the idea of Pakistan, the promise, was this unified nation, but the reality Zia describes living in, it was a completely different story. On one side, you have this promise of equality and shared pride, but on the other, he saw what he felt was systemic discrimination. His own Bengali language, his culture, his people, all of it being treated as second class. For him, this wasn't just some abstract political debate, it was personal. And, this wasn't some sudden flip of a switch. He writes that right from the start of his army career, he felt this incredibly powerful pull towards his Bengali roots. It was this growing sense that something precious, the very essence of his culture, was under threat, and that it needed a defender. This feeling, it evolved. It went from just a cultural connection to a full-blown political awakening. Because he was an insider, he describes witnessing what he called a deep-seated conspiracy and injustice against his people. And seeing that day in and day out, it changed him. It lit a fire, creating what he himself called a rebellious spirit inside the mind of an otherwise loyal officer. And that rebellious spirit, the one that had been simmering for years, it was about to be put to the ultimate test. The story now is hurtling towards that critical flashpoint, March 1971, the point of no return. Okay, so picture this. The air in East Pakistan is just thick with tension. Political talks have totally failed. A military buildup is happening all around. Everybody could feel it in their bones. Something violent was coming. The entire nation was just holding its breath. And then it happened. The military launched Operation Searchlight, what he saw as a brutal, sweeping, violent crackdown. And for Zia, this was it. The ultimate crisis of conscience. I mean, imagine, the very army you've served your whole life is now being turned against your own people. The time for just watching was over. A choice had to be made. In the middle of all that chaos and violence, Zia makes his move. He and his fellow Bengali officers, they revolt. He finds his way to a radio station in Kalugat, grabs the microphone, and he becomes the voice of a new nation. His personal journey and the destiny of his people finally slam together in that one incredibly powerful broadcast. That moment on the radio, that was the climax of everything he had been feeling and seeing for years. It was the public explosion of that private, rebellious spirit he wrote about. And in that instant, his identity was no longer split in two. So let's just trace that incredible transformation one more time. He starts as this loyal, professional soldier. Then, through his own lived experiences, he becomes a sharp observer of injustice. That observation sparks a rebellious spirit, which gives him a cause.
And finally, in a moment of absolute crisis, he takes that leap, becoming the voice that told the world a new nation was born. And all of this leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. Ziaur Rahman's story, told in his own words, is this profound example of how years of quiet observation and personal conviction can build up to one single public act of defiance, an act that can literally change the destiny of millions and alter the course of history forever.